Okay, today we're talking about ethics, I'm guessing. We're going to do two chapters today. We're going to do chapter 3 and chapter 4. They're both relatively short. Chapter 3 deals with ethics. I don't remember what chapter 4 is, but it fits right in. Um, Chapter 3 values, ethics, and legal obligations. You'll see this in every counseling class. Personal values. Values are preferred conceptions of people, their preferred outcomes for people, their preferred ways of dealing with people. These are your values. Personal values influence your view of the world, your personal and professional philosophies and choices, your view of how people change over time. And these are your personal values. We all have them. They tend to be a little bit different. We like to think that the guy that is sitting across from us that we're dealing with has the same values that we do, but the reality is that he probably doesn't. Professional values often include principles of respect, self-determination, social justice, and professional integrity. Areas where personal values may conflict with professional values include personal values conflict with professional values include in religion and health, marriage and family, education, role of government, birth and death, and honesty. When I was in college, the chemistry professor at my institution was a Christian scientist. He was a Christian scientist. Christian scientists believe that you can pray away problems like diseases and whatnot. Well, he had diabetes, and he started his legs got septic, and of course, being a Christian scientist, he wouldn't do anything about it. So his friend, his very very good friend, uh, who is the biology instructor at our institution, came over one night and he said, okay, so a doctor, you don't believe in doctors doing surgery on you, so I'm going to cut your leg off with a penknife. And he took out his knife and he actually stabbed him in the leg. And at that point, they agreed that he was going to go to the hospital, and that's what happened. There was a lot of argument as to whether he wasn't respecting his religion, but he said, I couldn't stand this man, this beautiful, wonderful man dying, this man that I love, and that the institution loves, just because of a religious belief. And I thought that if he could blame it on me, then it wouldn't be so bad. And of course, they remained friends. He actually the biologist died before the chemist did, and they amputated his leg, his septic leg, and he used to hobble around on a crutch. He wouldn't wear a prosthesis. It was kind of strange. Anyway, so there you go. Marriage and family, education, role of government, birth and death, and honesty. Ethical codes provide a brief explanation of what can be expected in the interactions between professionals and clients, as well as between professionals and other professionals. Ethical codes contain statements about what the professionals must and must not do. And these are some of the organizations that you may potentially belong to if you go into psychology or social work. The American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy, the American Counseling Association, the American Psychiatric Nurses Association, American Psychological Association, I'm a member of the APA, Association of Addiction Professions, International Association of Marriage and Family Counselors, National Association of Social Workers, National Organization of Human Services. And of course, you can look those up using those URLs. Professional competence includes practicing within the scope of competence based on education, training, professional credentials, and professional experience. One of the most important aspects of professional competence requiring professional self-awareness is cultural competence. And this is not, you guys think that this is going to be easy because, hey, you live on the Navajo reservation, you don't have to worry about understanding anybody else. But the reality is that you may understand your family, but you may not understand those strange people from Utah. You may not understand those odd people from Colorado, or those people that live on the checkerboard. out in New Mexico, or those people that live over by Flagstaff. And of course, there's always a possibility that you're going to get somebody who's non-Navajo to counsel, and you're going to need to understand them as well. You may be, unfortunately, you may have to counsel somebody who's non-native. They may be white, they may be Asian, they may be African American, and you need to understand them just like you would expect them to understand you. Cultural competence is defined as the application of cultural knowledge about individuals and groups of people to the standards, policies, attitudes, and practices of the helping process to result in better outcomes. Confidentiality is vital for information shared by the client with the therapist in the course of treatment. This information is not to be shared with others. Without confidentiality, clients are less likely to disclose sensitive information with the practitioner. Why maintain confidentiality? Potential for clients to experience stigma, moral obligation for helping professionals to follow the ethical standards for a professional, model of acting with discretion and keeping one's word, and of course, legal requirements. With the expansion of technology in all aspects of our lives, communication has become more and more difficult to regulate. Now we have cell phones, we have fax machines, we have answering machines, we have computers, we have internet sites. We need to limit sending confidential material on insecure lines. We need to be careful as to what we're doing here. We don't want to put it on Facebook, and we don't want everybody to know. Boundaries are defined as borders that separate some types of entities, for example, parents, children, systems, clients, service providers, and healthcare workers. In all helping relationships, maintaining appropriate boundaries is an essential part of developing a trusting relationship with a client. Relationship boundaries must be maintained with delicacy. Sexual relationships, and we're going to talk about sexual relationships is going to come up on a lot of these slides when we're talking about ethics. And the reason is because this is one of the basic reasons why counselors get in trouble, as we're going to see in just a second. Sexual relationships with clients are forbidden by all professional codes and represent the most common ethical complaints against helping professionals. In one study, 7 to 8% of the practitioners reported engaging in sexual intimacy with a client. These aren't people that got in trouble. These are people that admitted that they had had sex with their clients. That's almost 1 out of every 10. That's a lot of people who have had sex with the wrong people, with their clients. Sexual relationships can have a seriously negative effect on the client. Now you got to remember that the client is coming in because they've already got problems, and if you have sex with your client, you're just exacerbating the problems that they have. Cognitive dysfunction. They can't. Why in the world did they do this? Why did they allow you to have sex with them, or why did they seduce you? Identity and boundary disturbance, sexual confusion, rage and feelings of guilt, depression and emptiness, self-destructive feelings, increased risk of suicide. And of course, this is one of the things we certainly don't want to see, is our clients killing themselves. Touch, accepting gifts, and self-disclosure by professionals are behaviors that have the potential to be boundary violations, depending on the circumstance. More damage can be done by overstepping boundaries than the help previously given. And this, of course, is a really serious problem. So you're doing good work, you're doing good work. It's been going on for months. All of a sudden, all of it's just thrown out the window because you were inappropriate at some select point. As weird as that may seem. However, there is a difference between city ethics and rural small-town reservation boundary ethics. It is easy for a city practitioner to gravitate in different circles than their clients. In smaller communities, it can be nearly impossible. The desire to help the people in the community that you were raised in is very strong. When you know the client before trying to help them, you are maintaining a dual relationship, and you should try to avoid this. Be aware that if you take on this task, you are possibly in ethical violation, so be careful. Another challenge during your professional relationship is how much information about yourself you should disclose to the client. Self-disclosure should only be used in the best interest of the client, certainly not the practitioner. Now, as a teacher, one of the things I do is talk about myself a lot. I actually tell you lots and lots of stories about me and lots of stories about my life. That is the technique that I use. Some people won't give you any information whatsoever. You won't even know if they have children or whether they're married or not. As far as I'm concerned, my life is a teaching moment for my students. The fact that you have lots of information about me, it doesn't bother me at all. Mainly because mainly because I'm not really from anywhere. I'm kind of a vagabond. I've moved from place to place. I've lived in 17 different states and three different foreign countries. So my life is kind of not an open book. I guess that's not really the way to say it. But if I had always lived in the same place, of course, then potentially I would want to keep that information to myself. After the dance is over, after the professional relationship is over, all ethical code strictures are removed, but a practitioner needs to be careful about how much contact they have with an old client to avoid damage due to confusion. The power differential remains. They were fragile. They were subordinate to you. You were in a power position. Seeing you out of professional context may disclose vulnerabilities that you have, and they're going, "I believe this guy. Look what a jerk he is. He wears black socks with sandals." It will be difficult to accept this client professionally in the future, so you need to try to stay away from your ex-clients. Most codes of ethics discuss the following ethical issues related to assessing clients. The assessment procedure or instrument should be within your scope of practice, education, and training. Clients should be fully informed about the procedure and be included in the procedure in a collaborative way. Appropriate instruments or procedures should be selected based on the assessment question. Assessment instruments and procedures used should be standardized and include normative data appropriate for culturally diverse or disabled clients. One of the interesting things, or I don't know how interesting this is, but one of the things about American Indians is that tests are very rarely standardized using American Indians. One reason is because they are few and far between. You have to be in an area where there are American Indians. Minnesota has the Chippewa. And the other thing is that even if you standardize it with a select group, that group may not be similar to anybody else. If you live in New York City, well, I guess you can find American Indians in New York City. But what if you live in Tennessee? What if you live in, what if the test is made in Iowa? Iowa has the Meskwaki that live in the middle of the state, just north of Des Moines. But what's the probability that who would think that they would be representative of other American Indian tribes, the Northern Plains, the Southern Plains, the Southwestern tribes, the California tribes, the Northwestern tribes, the Mountain tribes. When administering, scoring, and interpreting instruments, appropriate procedures should be adhered to. Clients should be given a clear and complete explanation of the assessment results. All test and interview data should be kept secure and released only to individuals who are competent in interpreting the data. Informed consent means full disclosure of purposes, goals, techniques, and procedure rules for assessment and counseling approaches used in language that is understandable to the client. And this is a bit of a trick. Sorry, I needed a drink. This is sometimes a trick because it's difficult to understand how much they understand. Legal violations are distinct from ethical violations. Ethical challenges are generally brought before a state licensing board but can originate from a professional organization. Legal obligations to clients include duty to care, duty to respect privacy, duty to maintain confidentiality, duty to inform, duty to report, duty to warn. Legal limits to confidentiality. Confidentiality is not absolute. Laws vary by state. It is important to keep up to date with your own state laws concerning confidentiality requirements and expectations. And this is something to think about as far as the reservation is concerned. If you live in the largest part of the reservation, you'll be living in Arizona and you'll be licensed in Arizona. If you're going to, well, you'll probably be licensed in Arizona. You could be licensed in Utah. You could be licensed in New Mexico, and potentially, of course, Colorado isn't actually part of the reservation, but you may be north of the reservation and need to be licensed in Colorado. Malpractice is defined as negligence in which a professional fails to follow generally accepted standards of the profession, resulting in injury to a client. The client must prove 4 things about the practitioner to recover damages. The practitioner owed the client a duty to conform to a particular standard of conduct. The practitioner had an obligation to follow defined standards of care. The practitioner breached the duty by some act of omission or commission in the professional practice. The clients or others suffered measurable damage or injury. The practitioner's conduct was the direct or proximate cause of the damage. The top 5 reasons for malpractice of practitioners in the United States are: incorrect treatment is number 1. Sexual improprieties, not strangely, is number 2. Breach of confidence is number 3. Failure to diagnose or incorrect diagnosis is number 4. And the suicide of the patient, thank goodness, is only number 5 and isn't that common. Sexual impropriety, there you go, is number 2. We talked about this before. Inappropriate behavior with your client. It's something that is relatively common. I have known people that got into the game, got into counseling because they were sexual predators and they were looking for somebody to prey on. If you watch select television shows or movies, there are individuals that are looking for women that are damaged so that they can have sex with them. This, of course, they are not counselors, but this is not an uncommon practice. There are individuals that try to get women drunk so that they can have sex with them. These are sexual predators, and of course, that doesn't leave out all of the helping professions. Sometimes people are sexual predators. If a practitioner loses in court, there may be several consequences. They might be fined for damages, punitive damages, or for further counseling. They have to pay for further counseling. They may lose their license. Of course, they will lose their reputation to some extent. Future difficulties in obtaining malpractice insurance because the insurance company has already paid out one large settlement. The court case, whether won or lost, might damage the practitioner financially, emotionally, or professionally. A lot of people, once they're sued, they just get out of the profession. So minimizing the risk of ethical or legal challenges, adhere to up-to-date practice methods, document your practices, your good practices, maintenance of appropriate boundaries with your clients, no multiple relationships, then you'll be safer anyway. These are people that are damaged, and sometimes they are looking to hurt somebody. And so you've got to be extremely careful as to how you speak to and how you treat select individuals. Sometimes they're just looking for a payday. The following activities may lead to malpractice. Sexual relationship with your client, there you go, is the one on top. Practicing beyond your scope of competency. Fraudulent billing. Fraudulent billing is huge. Some people get into counseling because they want to make money. And one of the ways you can tell if these individuals are just trying to make big bucks is where in the world did they set up their practice? If we look at Arizona, almost uh, all of the counselors in the state are in either Phoenix, Tucson, or Flagstaff, and that is because that's where the money is. You know, if you really just want to help, why don't you help the people on the reservation? Why don't you move to Tuba City? Why don't you move to Holbrook? Why don't you move to Show Low? Why don't you move to Snowflake? Nope, they're all in Phoenix, Tucson, and Flagstaff. Violation of reporting. So some people are in this just for the money. Violation of reporting laws, breach of confidentiality, or refusal to provide records. You got to be really careful of your clients. Sometimes your clients will use. Um, okay, let me tell you. Let me tell you a quick story. I was working with an individual. His job was to evaluate sexual people that had been arrested for sexual problems, rape or sexual exploitation, pedophilia, those kinds of things. His job was to evaluate them and to find out if they were should be released from prison. Usually that was what was going on. And he did some counseling on the side. And usually there were people who had been to prison and he was trying to help them stay out of prison. Well, there's one individual that he saw before he went to jail, and this individual had was going to jail for uh, sexual exploitation. And one of the people that he sexually exploited that he wasn't being sent to jail for was his wife. His wife came in, very, very attractive individual, extremely attractive individual, strikingly attractive individual. um, let's see, how can I explain this? Okay. So she came in with her husband, and her husband was going to jail, and he wanted to know how he could get out earlier, what he needed to do, what he needed to say, and he was not a very nice person. They really didn't like him. But she came in with him, and he said, "Can you take care of my wife while I'm in prison? She may need some help. She doesn't have anybody to take care of her, and she may get confused." And so this very, very attractive woman came in. It was really kind of interesting because my friend was male. My friend had actually been a male stripper, as weird as that is. Anyway, so this lady comes in, and here's this strikingly attractive young lady. Here's this fairly handsome man. And of course, the first thing that happens is that she hits on him. She hits on him, and he was real uncomfortable. He just about terminated it right away, but it turned out that he and his wife were in practice together, and he sent this lady to his wife. She was the kind of person that she'd been raised by a father that ignored her. And of course, in order for her to get any attention from him, she had to flirt with him. And so this became her modus operandi, that she flirted with men, and this is how she was able to manipulate them. This is what she did with her father. And as it turned out, the reason that this creep was married to her was because he ignored her, and she couldn't get him to pay attention to her. So in order for her to uh, be able to get his attention, she had to do more and more sexually explicit things, and that was what she learned. That's how she was conditioned. Not by her father. Her father didn't really condition her to do this, but her boyfriend did, and to the extent that he was using her, he's paying off his debts by having her have sex with whoever he owed money to. Just horrible, horrible things. Anyway, she was so damaged because um, she needed men to pay attention to her. And the only way she could get them to pay attention to her was by flirting with them. And so that's what she tried to do with my friend, my colleague actually, and he, of course, not wanting to, and he recognized what was going on. And of course, he could have exploited her as well, but he sent her to his wife. She'd never had any female friends because she was really very, very attractive, and she acted dumb. But that turned out to be the very opposite of what was actually going on. She's actually quite intelligent. So eventually, the whole feminist thing took place. The counseling wife talked her into trying to become her own woman. Eventually, she divorced her husband. She went to college, and as weird as this is, all she had to do was put on glasses. She couldn't see very well. So as soon as she put on glasses, she was still very, very attractive. But as soon as she put on glasses and she could read and she could see what was going on, it changed her personality completely. She changed the way that she dressed. She always showed just tons of cleavage. And now, suddenly she's covering herself, and she wore really short skirts, or Daisy Dukes and whatnot. She wore high boots in the winter time. It's just, okay, just her personality changed completely. Anyway, so this is one of the things that you need to think about, that sometimes clients will try to get around you through sex. That's just the way things happen sometimes. So you need to be aware that these people are out there, that these people use sex as a tool, as a weapon. Ethical dilemmas involve I did this before, involve making a choice between two or more relevant but contradictory ethical directives where every alternative results in some type of undesirable outcome for one or more persons. This is a situation where you're damned if you do, no matter which one you pick. So, this is an ethical dilemma. Reamer in 1995 describes two principles that can guide practitioners in resolving ethical dilemmas. Beneficence, where the practitioners should take action intended to help or benefit others. Non-malfeasance, where the practitioner should act without malice in order to do no harm. Elaine Congress, a social worker, came up with the ethic model of decision making in 2000, and this is the ethic model. Examine all the relevant client, personal, agency, professional, and societal values, including personal, societal, cultural, agency, client, and professional values. Think about the ethical standards of your professional code of ethics and relevant laws. Hypothesize about all the possible consequences of different decisions. Identify all who might benefit and all who might be harmed. It is often necessary to research potential consequences of possible decisions on all those involved. Consult with supervisors and colleagues as they begin to formulate choices. When a supervisor, colleague, or consultant is involved, the final decision must take their thoughts into consideration. And that is the end of that chapter. Let me get rid of this, and we'll go to the next chapter. As you can see, there's only 18 slides: professionalism and professional relationships. Let me take a quick drink, and then we'll get started. There we go. Lemonade. Lemonade. Professionalism and professional relationships. And that's me. A professional is a person who has specialized training for a particular career and who acts in conscientious, appropriate ways in the workplace. Being a professional involves conducting yourself in an appropriate manner, dressing appropriately, being organized, timely, and accurately, recording meetings with colleagues and clients, being prepared for meetings. Being a professional involves acting responsibly at all times, behaving as a mature adult, using language that is culturally appropriate, age-appropriate, understandable, and not offensive, speaking honestly and with integrity, knowing how to communicate information. Each setting has different expectations. Roles vary based on different ages and backgrounds of clients, system size, individuals, groups, families, and organizations, level of training or education. I have a PhD. I have a master's degree in counseling. Um, so my professional role is probably a little bit different than somebody who doesn't have a PhD. Practitioners with graduate degrees might have several roles: working independently in private practice, being a counselor or educator, being a supervisor, being a consultant, being a director. One task that practitioners with graduate degrees may be asked to do is act as a mediator. And of course, this is very popular on the reservation. A mediator provides an impartial forum for disputing parties to discuss areas of disagreement or misunderstanding. Generalists maintain expertise in a broad range of functions: case management, coordination and monitoring of services, broker linking clients with services and resources, advocate working to support a client. Being professional goes beyond what you do in your interactions with colleagues and clients. Being aware of the social, political, economic, and cultural factors that impact individuals, families, groups, and institutions, and advocating for their betterment. Developing a professional identity involves knowing what it means to be a practitioner or of your particular discipline. Scope of practice involves knowing what activities, knowledge, and skills identified by licensing boards and professional organizations relate to your discipline. Sometimes organizations will employ groups of professionals that they will organize into working teams. Each member will bring their own professionalism, culture, education, and individual ways of dealing with clients. Working productively with interdisciplinary teams is an important aspect of being a professional. This may mean that the practitioner must learn the language of another profession. Every professional must respect the expertise of their professional colleagues. The practitioner working in a team must recognize that different professionals may work toward the same goal using different methods. Even in the same profession, practitioners may use different approaches. Your supervisor will help evaluate your level of competency by providing feedback about your use of skills, inviting you to engage in self-reflection. Consultation involves meeting with an expert who can help you solve a particular dilemma or problem. Sometimes your client's problem may be beyond you or your team's ability to handle. At that point, a consultant must be called in to help. Most professions set ethical standards or guidelines for remaining current with best practices, continuing education, evaluating your work, continuing education in ethical standards every year. While the practitioner is responsible for structuring the relationship with the client, success can only be reached if the relationship is collaborative, goal-directed, purposeful, and time-limited. A relationship between a client and practitioner is a fiduciary relationship. The client has confidence and trust, and that's what fiduciary means, in the practitioner's competency. Unequal with the practitioner having more the unique nature of professional relations. It is unequal, with practitioner having more power than the client, but with power comes a responsibility to help the client in the manner prescribed initially by the practitioner. And that is that. Okay, that takes care of Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. I think I was supposed to do Chapter 3 with last week, but it fit better with this week's lecture. I'll pretend that's why I did it. Actually, I didn't look at the schedule. Okay, so now I'm caught up. Chapter 3 and Chapter 4, and now I'm caught up. Everybody stay safe. We will talk more about how we're going to do the counseling in the future. If anybody has any ideas, email me, or you can. I have office hours every 4 days a week. Monday it's 8 to 10. Tuesday, Wednesday it is 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and on Thursday it's 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock again. If somebody needs to talk to me at some other time, then just email me and I will arrange for another time. I'm here to help. We'll try to get through this. It's never easy to do the counseling online, but this may be the wave of the future. With COVID-19, I have a feeling things aren't really going to go back to the way they were. Will probably be everything will change because of COVID-19, and of course, you never know what's going to be on the what's going to happen with the flu epidemic. I mean, we mix these two together. Who knows what's going to happen next? Anyway, so I'll see you guys next week. Stay safe.